we were expecting to leave that day, having seen a super cute little baby in an ultrasound, and then moving on to the next phase of our journey, and that's just not what happened. I remember waking up the morning of our graduation day at our fertility center and it just being such a happy day. We had a huge bouquet of flowers for our doctor and a written note because we knew that we weren't going to be able to see her that day. There's always this super nerve-wracking, gut-wrenching feeling you get before each appointment because the stakes are so high, and we hadn't gotten the best news throughout our fertility journey, so we were a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. Finding out that the baby had stopped growing and no longer had a heartbeat, and in those moments it was a little bit, I know it's hard to tell in the video, but we just kind of go blank, completely blank. I look over and I'm watching Brandon, who was taking a video of a screen of the ultrasound, and he kind of stops and sits down, and he just it's so hard to describe. It's just he just puts his head down, and the nurse is talking to him and talking to me, but he's not responding to anything. And I felt like in that moment I needed to be strong and hold it together so that we can finish this appointment and the door can close and I can go from there. There's nothing that can describe that experience. It just was surreal. It was surreal, but not in a good way. She started to break down 3 options that you have after you find out that you're going to miscarry, which was 1, to let it pass naturally, 2, to induce it with a medication called misoprostol, which are little tablets that you insert vaginally, and that helps the process move along. Or you can seek your normal doctor's office or do it with them to get a D&C. Sitting there listening to her talk because she needed to know if we wanted to leave with the prescription or not, and I just wanted to get out of there. So we just said, yes, we'll take the prescription and then we'll figure out later if we want to fill it or whatever. So she walks out and closes the door, and I break down, and at this point we kind of do a switch. Brandon's now holding it together, and I feel like I just need to get out of there, and I felt so awful leaving him. But how the rooms are set up is that all the rooms are kind of around the center of where the nurse's station is, so everybody sees you when you walk out. And we walk out of the room, and I just jet. And I'm walking past the front desk lady, and she looks at me and she goes, "Nicole, we have a gift for you too. We have a little gift for everybody who graduates the fertility center." And she hands me this bag, and I just said, "Thank you." And I just walked out as fast as I could. I didn't have the heart to tell her or explain what had just happened. There was a waiting room full of people. It was just such a hard moment. So I go out the door, and at this point I'm I don't know what's going on. I'm speechless, out of words. So I go outside, and I'm feeling terrible that I had left him in there, but I'm standing outside, and the lady from the front desk comes out the door and just says, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." You could just tell that she felt awful, and I felt awful for her. I'd feel bad too. But she just gives me the biggest hug, and I handed it back to her, and I just said, I know I'm going to get there one day, and I want to see it that day that I get there. At this point, I'm messaging work and I'm telling them I'm not going to be able to make it, which was a little bit tough because it just happened to be I work for teachers. That was their first week back in school, and they were like waiting to leave to go to work for the first day back after the summer. So this was a really tough week to find out this news. And so anyways, obviously they were amazing and just said, don't worry about it. Just sent all their love and support. Brandon and I went home and we cried, and we just cried. It was hard. We had to figure out, what our next steps were going to be. I took a couple days to figure it out because I knew it was such a tough week for the families that I worked for, for them to stay home. I just went. I went the next day and for the rest of the week, and then on a Thursday night I decided I'm gonna take the misoprostol and start this process and try to grieve. And making that decision was probably the hardest thing that I have had to do because it felt wrong. It did. It felt really wrong. There was no way that I was going to bring this baby back. The baby wasn't growing. There was no heartbeat anymore. Nothing was going to make the situation better. And to wait it out was going to be really difficult, especially knowing that, now I have to jump back into more treatment and take more time off of work. And there's already so many appointments and everything that goes into it. So I decided on the misoprostol. I shared the news before all of this happened, and it was extremely helpful. And I was so thankful for all the love and support and advice that I got for what I was about to go through, because it's really scary to not know what miscarrying is going to be like, what it's going to feel like. And I was petrified. I'd seen this baby growing inside of me, and now I knew in my home what it's like. It's going to leave my body, but where's it gonna go? And it was just, it's a lot to think about, and it's something that I would have never thought about if I wasn't in the situation, because you hear about miscarriages happening and you just think like, oh, that's awful and that's so sad and how hard that must have been for that person. But until you have to experience it firsthand, you can't understand the gravity of it. I just really don't think you can unless you go through it. So anyways, I got some medicine. I got like electrolytes, coconut water, Gatorade, comfort food. I cleaned the apartment. I set up my couch and my surroundings to be the most comfortable atmosphere for what I was going to go through. I was a little bit prepared for how it, people told me how it might feel and what it might be like. So I decided I wasn't going to wait till the next day. Took the medicine. I can't remember timing and everything exactly. I know I have it in a post, but I want to say like 45 or so minutes later, I started to get heavy cramps, like contractions, very bad contractions in my abdomen and my lower back. It was very painful. Brandon was with me, but he had an early morning the next morning, but he was going to stick it out with me and ended up falling asleep on the couch. And so I just let him be, and he went to bed, and I just kind of stayed up all night and had to go through the experience, which I think was probably good to kind of do it on my own, because it's really hard for him to see me in that kind of pain, and I have never felt that kind of pain. It was unbearable. It honestly felt unbearable for several hours. In the middle of the night, I knew exactly when it happened. It was really hard. It was really hard. In fact, like this, the first sign of, like, the minute I saw blood at all, like I just finally broke. I just broke down. And I panicked in that moment when I saw the blood for the first time. I didn't know what to do, and I had to kind of take a minute and reset and kind of come back and prepare myself for what was to come. So I got through the night. The rest of the weekend was sad and pretty uncomfortable. I had an appointment a couple days later. The doctor had confirmed that the yolk sac or the gestational sac and the baby had passed. However, I had a lot of tissue still, and so I did a second round of misoprostol. Thankfully, it wasn't quite as painful, but it was still the same process. I got through that. In the meantime, life continues. We had events and things that we needed to go to, and it's like you don't realize this. You feel like on the outside that when somebody miscarries, it just happens and then it's done, but that's not the case. Your body is going through this process for weeks. Well, for me at least, my HCG levels dropped really slowly. I did not even know that was a thing. I thought, once you miscarry or once the baby passes, like, you don't have an HCG, but mine dropped so slowly. It took weeks to get down to 0, which was tough for me because at the time, like, I was so close to having a pregnancy that I wanted to jump back right away. And I know, like, looking back, that wasn't rational, and I needed this time to really grieve and to process the situation. But at the time, it was frustrating that my body just was having such a difficult time. Once my HCG finally got down to 0, I was able to kind of be on the lookout for starting another treatment. I had a cycle that I thought was my first period after the miscarriage, and we moved forward with it. But once I did more blood work, they realized that my other hormone levels were not where they should be. So that kind of determined that wasn't a real period. It was a continuation of the miscarriage. And that was really hard because that was, like, very unexpected. One thing that I've really learned is that healing is not linear. Some days are really good and other moments are really hard, and you just kind of have to take it day by day. What I can say is that I'm very thankful that I have such a loving family and group of friends and a huge support system. I have learned to lean on others in a way that maybe I hadn't in the past because I'm such a caretaker. Well, over time, it has become a lot easier to open up about and talk about. I share everything so publicly. I'm grateful for the fact that they feel like they can trust me and kind of tell me these intimate details about their experiences, and that we can connect together and I can help them through it and they help me through it. And I really love that about this process of documenting and sharing this story, and I think it really truly makes it all worth it. I feel like it gives our hardships a purpose.